I'm chatting here today with Pete from Foursquare Distillery, a great rum producer from Barbados. Pete, welcome to Clandestine Whiskey.
Thank you. Thanks for having us, man. It's good to see you.
Oh yeah, likewise. We first met at the whiskey show actually in London a couple of months ago, and you kindly gave me some samples of Foursquare and some Dawlys, and it's got me really excited into the category, because I'm a whiskey guy and armagnac and cognac, and you've had the rums in the past. I remember having I think the old I forget what it's called now, the Navy rum, which is really strong. Back in the day, it was always on the bars.
We would, yeah,
that's the one. Yeah, exactly. And it's something I want to explore more. But I think you've got an audience of whiskey drinkers here. So Pete, just quickly run through what's rum made of. Sugarcane, but what's the process? Just talk us through it very, very quickly.
Cool. Well, it's in many respects it's all the key steps are identical to whiskey. It's just what we start with. So as you say, rum has to be made from sugarcane ultimately. So it's either from the juice from the cane or molasses, which is the byproduct of sugar production. So can't be anything else. So people say, well, what about sugar beet? No, just because it's sweet doesn't qualify for it. It's got to be made from sugar cane. But fermentation, distillation, and then maturation is exactly the same. So you can either going to use in short fermentations with a standard yeast, or it could be a long fermentation, wild yeast, whatever yeast blows in on the breeze. It could be running for a month even. Distillation in pot still, pretty normal. Distillation in column stills could be a combination of both of those spirits put together, as in the case of Foursquare, so pot and column blends. And then say in maturation, we're lucky in the rum world, in lots of countries you don't necessarily have to age it to call it a rum, but in other ones you do. So depends on the kind of influence in the production country. So in Barbados you can make rum straight off the still, it's rum. In some countries you have to put it in a barrel, and 12 months later, 18 months later, whatever it might be, then it can become rum. So there's that. But the styles of rum are pretty diverse, from very, very light through to very, very heavy, and there's everything in between. So it sounds like a very simple thing, but there's a world of flavors to be explored.
So a white rum such as Bacardi, is that equivalent to a new make spirit? Is that just been completely not aged in cask, or what's the difference?
Well, this is the bit. That's a really good example, because yes, it's clear, but the reason it's clear is it's been actually run through carbon filter. So it's actually had the color taken out of it. So it is actually, in order to become a rum under Puerto Rican regulation, it has to be at least 18 months old. I believe it's 18 months there. It is made at different places around the world. It depends also where you're selling it. So if you're selling Bacardi in Australia, you have to have a 2-year-old mark, because that's a minimum age statement for rum in Australia. So so each market has its own regulations. So it depends where you're making it, where you're selling it to. But invariably, there are brands on the market, famous ones here in the UK, like Ray and Nephew, for example, that are unaged rums, and all the flavour comes purely from fermentation and distillation. There's no need to further mature it. But the vast majority of rums we're used to are aged to a certain extent. Yeah. And we're not even we haven't even got into spice rums and spirit drinks yet either. So maybe that's a subject for another day.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think as whiskey guys, then we're probably not as interested in the spice rums. That to me it seems gimmicky as opposed to the quality of a rum.
We're in a really interesting situation right now, that say particularly here in the UK, and I'd say it's reflected around the world, that spice rum is a massively growing category. It's technically under sort of EU regs, there is no such thing as spice rum. You have to call it a spirit drink. So once rum cannot be flavored and still be called rum. But it's an interest. It's a point of interest, much like gin was. When its boom, I'd like to think probably the gin boom has probably peaked and is waning a bit. But there's an interest in it, and there's an interest in spice rum. But I would suggest, for the purposes of conversation, it's kind of like don't think of spice rum and rum as being in the same category. They might share a common base, but in the same way that gin and vodka are not the same thing. Gin is a flavored neutral spirit, effectively. So we think of them separately. I sometimes see at rum festivals, I see whiskey people going like, when they've arrived at a brand that sweetens their rum, And that's a thing that happens. Foursquare doesn't. We're very much against. We make a good, honest, authentic spirit. Some brands do add sugar, and I see some folks turn up who claim to be like, yeah, their whiskey background. They try it and go like, oh, their face goes, wow, that's so easy to drink. It's yeah, that little bit of sugar kind of helps, and it's lovely and easy. You know what? And if that's your thing, absolutely. But I would suggest that in general, I would say that people that understand whiskey are in a really strong position to understand authentic rum. Yeah, all the markers that make it a quality product.
I'm really, really happy you said that, because I've got your Dawley's XO here, and I've got it in the glass. And the first thing my first impression when I had it was, I really enjoy this. The nose I thought was absolutely just so beautiful, peaches, cream, just lovely. Then the palate was dry, and I thought, thank Christ for that. Because I've had so many rums which have been sweet, and I'm not a sweet drink guy. And I can enjoy a dram, or what do you call it? What do you call what is it? What is it? What's a shot of?
I guess in the rum world we talk about tots, maybe with the
So I can have a
tot of rum with a Navy connection. So
yeah. So a tot of rum, and that's kind of it. I can't do any more of that sweetness. So to taste yours was just like, yeah, this is good. I can really get into this brand, and this Doorlys XO, it's like such good value as well. Like sort of £35 a bottle. It's immense, and it's not like a young spirit. It's like between like 6 and 8 or 10 years old, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. It is the flagship one, flagship in the expression in the range. It's been around for a long time. It was actually I don't know. We'll talk about the family history of the Oral Seal family and Foursquare, but it was actually the first blend that was put together by Richard Seal. And so it's actually a dual maturation. So there's a sweetness to it, but it's that sweetness that comes through good cask use. The use of ex-bourbon cask. So it's possible to make a sweet rum, but not a sweet. Making a sweetened rum is where you take it beyond just a little perception and then on to crazy, embarrassing levels. But Doorlys XO it speaks a lot of the language. It's a dual maturation. It's 5 years in ex-bourbon cask, and then it's given 1 to 3 years in Oloroso sherry casks, ex-Oloroso sherry. So so those casks are in different conditions, hence why they're some of them well used, some of them are brand new, kind of supplied to the distillery. So hence why there's not like a fixed age statement with it. But it is the only one in the range that actually doesn't come with an age statement. Everything else in the Doorlys range is you'll see 5-year-old, 8-year-old, 12, and that you've got something that has a minimum age statement with it. So again, all the markers that Foursquare use are always the same thing. So if you see an age statement, you can guarantee it's the minimum age.
Yeah.
The difference is, of course, the Caribbean offer over whiskey production is like it's in the Caribbean. It's warmer. The interaction with the barrel happens a lot faster, and so spirits can mature a lot quicker than they do in colder climates. And so actually, it's so like Dawley's 14, for example, it's a very mature spirit. And well, 14 doesn't sound that old, but in the context of the Caribbean, we're actually looking at something that's like, 30 plus years of maturity about it if it was matured in colder climates. Of course, the maturation is different because, it's not the same kind of maturation, but it's that notion. So people that are looking for rums from the Caribbean or from the tropics, don't go looking for a 50-year-old and thinking it's going to be commonplace. That there are, Appleton Estate released a 50-year-old expression, and it took them a lot of managing to get to that point. So that warmer climate, that comes with a much faster angel share, a higher angel share than placing colder things. So they talk about 1 to 2% per annum in Scotland, I think. The Caribbean can be anywhere sort of 8 to 12%, lost to the angels. So that's, yes, it's a different place to mature spirits, but so I think it speaks the right language. Obviously the base that where it starts comes through, but time in oak is a large part of the flavor profile and what's driven that.
Yeah, you've answered my next. I was going to come on to the angel share next and how you do that and how you manage that, because I have seen obviously these higher age statement rums, and it just must be frighteningly expensive evaporation going on. Tell me about the actual Foursquare distillery. Is it just a wonderful building overlooking the sugar plantation?
So it's so Foursquare don't well, actually no, you know what, rewind that, I'll come back on that. Up until just recently, they don't have their own cane fields, so they don't grow sugar cane, harvest it, and then process it from scratch. Everything that's commercially available on the market at the moment is made from molasses, and they will source as much Barbados molasses as they can get their hands on. The sugar industry in Barbados is not big enough to support all the producers on the island, and they all want a share of it. So some of the molasses is imported, and so then that's fermented. But actually, in the modern era, Foursquare Distillery are making changes to actually to grow their own cane on land that they're acquiring around the distillery. Because they're actually, for the last few years, they've been buying cane from farmers locally, crushing it and fermenting and distilling, so cane juice, and actually laying that down for maturation. And it's quite a different prospect as well, especially when it's freshly harvested and distilled. Sorry. And none of those distillates have found their way into sort of commercial releases at the moment. But Foursquare Distillery actually dates back to 1600s. Well, Foursquare Sugar facility, I should say, dates back to 1600s. So Barbados was effectively sugarcane in the time. You know, it was a very valuable crop. Lots of cane being grown, lots of sugar being produced, making lots of people, well, making a few people very, very rich. The sugar industry, and they say, struggled like it did everywhere around the world. It becomes driven by price, and so when you can't produce the sugar for appropriate price, you know, the work dries up. The place was closed. So actually, the sugar place was closed in the 1980s. Foursquare's family history, the R.L. Seals family history. Actually, the company started in 1926, and like a lot of other rum merchants at the time, merchant blenders, they were buying rum from the distilleries that were operating and blending their own products. And they've been doing that all the way up to the mid-1990s. But in the mid-90s, they kind of like wanted I think they wanted a little bit more control of their own destiny. Instead of buying rums from other people, that they wanted to be making their own rums from scratch. And so decided, like, right, we're going to break ground. We're going to make a distillery. So the Foursquare sugar site was really like a stone's throw from Richard Seals' father, who was a sort of currently run the business. I said, let's buy that site. Let's buy it. And, you know, the building that was there previously was turned into a distillery. So it's a site with lots of history about it. And there's lots of remnants of the sugar making processes still around, but they don't make sugar on site. They just, they've turned it into a distillery. And honestly, it looks gorgeous. So if you find yourself in Barbados, well, let us know. We'll make sure you get a good tour. But if anyone who rocks up in Barbados can just go and have a little look around. There's a self-guided tour, or you can pay a couple of Barbados dollars and get a guided tour, and which ends up in the Copper Still Bar, where you then can try the rums. And that was actually a still house. So every distillery, every sugar place in Barbados, and probably across the Caribbean, would have had a place where you would have been making rum. The two have been, you know, linked throughout history. If you're making sugar, you're almost guaranteed to be making rum. But the process over time, from sort of estate production through to industrialized production, meant that things changed. So there's a nice symmetry. So it's all kind of come full circle, where they are now just starting to grow their own cane. They'll be then fermenting and distilling that. And so in the future, the rums that come out of Foursquare Distillery will be a blend of from molasses and from cane juice, or have all the potential to be. Let's put it that way. I don't know what Richard will be doing with it. I think Richard will make that decision as he gets a bit further down the line.
So you've got Foursquare and Dawlys. Is the difference literally that Foursquare is using the better casks?
No, no, I would say so. So it does make it a little complicated to understand the various SKUs produced at Foursquare Distillery. So Foursquare Distillery is owned by the R.L. Seal company. So that's the family-owned business that have been making rum for like 4 generations now, or 5 if you count Richard's son. They are Richard and I are particularly interested in the history of rum in Barbados. I think there's no greater fanatic really about wanting to preserve Barbados's history. Barbados has been making rum, probably that they are the first territory to be making rum as we know it, the first country, say since the early 1600s. So Martin Dawley was one of the contemporaries of the R.L. Seal Company back to the turn of the century. He was a merchant blender, and he had the distinction of being the first sort of merchant blender that actually exported a brand from the island. Now that sort of sounds, well, that's a bit mad, but if you think back in time, lots of rum was being made in bulk and being shipped to like London Dock or to Scotland or whatever it was, where merchants were buying and blending, creating their own names. So like Lambs and Lemonheart, and but there's lots of the brands that buying from different places and making their own blends. So to actually to export your own brand, which was called Macaw Rum by Martin Dawley Company, was a bit of a mark of honor. And we don't think about it so much in the modern era, but of course if you're in Barbados, you're going to look at that brand with some sort of pride. So when the Martin Dawley Company sort of came to they got to a point from a trading point of view where they couldn't carry on, the R.L. Seal Company bought the rights to the company, and so they then. Right, the Dawlys brand is the one they want. So there was a little bit of marketing it. So they kept the Dawlys on the label. They kept the Macaw, which it was famous for. And then as the line expanded, that's why there's different Macaws on the front. So you can stick into things. Yeah. So it's about preserving that connection to the past. But then if you look into the other things they do there, they have John D. Taylor's Velvet Falernum. Well, John D. Taylor was a merchant blender, and they acquired the rights to that company. There's a number of brands that historically sort of significant on the island, and they've looked to kind of keep them. So when you look at the portfolio, it's a bit, you're like, why it looks a little disparate, but you have to kind of realize that it's actually historically significant. So all the rums are made in exactly the same way, from the same fermentation, distillation. The route that's different for them is really the age, the presentation, the blend combination, and the proof that they're bottled at. So Dawley's range is what we call like the core commercial range. It's always available, the permanent line. So there's Dawley's 3 and 5, which are kind of, I guess, more pitched at the mixing kind of end of things, cocktails and the like. Dawley's XO, which is the flagship, which we need to see on every bar in the world, basically, and then we have the rare and sort of the more limited in Dawley's 12 and 14. But you mentioned the Foursquare. The Foursquare limited edition ranges are where the company get to play. Richard Seal and his team get to let's bring together a few things just so we can. It's like declaring a vintage. It's like doing something a little bit different once in a while. Not necessarily better casts. Maybe it's a smaller parcel of casts that just happen to be exhibiting particular qualities, but there's not enough of them to use them in the main commercial offering. It's suited to a limited edition. So those ones tend to then be presented in a more spirit lovers kind of mode. There'll be a high proof, literally no chill filtration or anything like that. So keep it very, very simple. And they are increasingly popular these days. They tend to sell out on day of release because people have realized their qualities. Well, it used to be a pleasure bringing a new ECS to market, because we got this fantastic thing, we'd take it around and sample it, and these days all we get is people on Twitter going like, I can't get it, why can't I get it? I've been a lifelong fan, now I can't get it. So, I'm sorry.
Are they available at the distillery generally?
Yes. So again, so if you find yourself in Barbados, you'll be able to buy from the Copperstill Bar. And of course, the good thing about buying a bottle of rum in Barbados is that it is significantly better price. I mean, I look at it, I go like, how on earth do you guys make any money? No, we make our money, but we haven't got all the huge amounts of tax and everything. I mean, this country, we do, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs does tend to add a lot of value to a bottle of spirits through duty. And of course, it's cost of logistics, and everyone has to have their margin for handling along the way as well. So, I mean, I think honestly, I mean, you alluded like Dawley's XO, 35 quid thereabouts. I mean, occasionally you get a cracking deal on Amazon, but it represents wonderful value for money. Yeah. And it really is. It's kind of like, we want rum to be the next big popular thing, but the more people know about it, then like the secret's getting out. Stop buying all my rum.
Catch 22. Catch 22.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have to. I've got about I think I've got 250,000 air miles on Virgin, who I presume still fly to Barbados. So
Very much so.
I should use
You
some
should
of those.
definitely catch some of them, my friend. Well, I'd say so. It depends on how quick you're keen to get out there, but if you can wait till November 2022, then the Barbados Rum Experience will be on, and that's a week-long event, with which I've literally just attended the inaugural one, but they're already planning for the second one, where it's a massive deep dive into all things Barbados rum and rum culture and the connection with sugar and all the dark history that goes with slavery. And it really is, it's a full deep dive into rum, and a week-long deep dive at that. You know, it was a pretty full-on experience, and I expect the second one to be even better.
I feel a clandestine rum magazine coming on a special issue. That sounds absolutely perfect to me.
I know Richard would love to see you out there.
Oh, you know, I think I'm gonna have to do that, because I think, yeah, because you can't always get reward flights, but booking this far in advance, actually you can only book like 10 months in advance generally, can't you? Guys, I used to fly all the time. Now I've just forgotten. But yeah, so yeah, I think I'll be out there for that, because escape the grey skies of England as well.
It's also a very good time. The beginning of November is a very good time to go to Barbados. It's the end of the sort of the wet and the hurricane season.
Yeah,
coming into what is prime time now in the Caribbean. It's like glorious weather. Yeah. Without, you know, if you leave it a few more months, then it gets into unbearably hot kind of time. So this is just a glorious time to be there. I wish we were there right now, honestly.
You sold me. I have spent Christmas Day on Bondi Beach in Australia, so I've done the whole Christmas in the warmth thing. That's back in the days where we could actually you didn't have to have a ticket to go on Bondi, and you could drink. And yeah, we drank irresponsibly, but that was back in the day in 1994, bygone era, where you could do these things. You know, you're traveling, so who cares? It's good fun, isn't it? You know, let loose. What better way to do it? Pete, thank you so much for your time today. Really hugely appreciate it. Love your rums, and look forward to seeing you in Barbados.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for having us, man.
No problem.
See you on.
Cheers.